Once, in a quiet village nestled in the foothills of towering mountains, there lived a young man known to all for his laziness. He was always seen lounging under trees, skipping his chores, and avoiding any form of hard work. His peers would mock him, while his parents often shook their heads in disappointment. The young man, however, was content with this life. He had convinced himself that the world had nothing to offer that required effort. One day, while the villagers went about their usual busy lives, a wise monk passed through the village. This monk, known for his wisdom and insight, noticed the young man lying under the shade of a tree. Sensing the young man's untapped potential, the monk approached him and said, "Young man, I see you have much time on your hands. Would you do me a favor?" The young man barely opened his eyes and grumbled, "Why should I? What favor could you possibly ask of me?" The monk, undeterred by the young man's response, smiled gently and said, "I need a feather, but not just any feather. I want you to climb the highest mountain and bring back a feather from the peak." At first, the young man laughed at the absurdity of the request. "Climb a mountain for a feather? That sounds like a lot of unnecessary work," he scoffed. "Why don't you find someone else to do it?" But the monk, with a calm and wise expression, replied, "Because only you can learn what this journey will teach." Curiosity began to stir within the young man. He didn't care much for feathers or mountains, but there was something about the monk's words that intrigued him. After a moment of hesitation, he grudgingly agreed, thinking he could always turn back if things got too hard. The next morning, he set out for the mountain. As he stood at the base, gazing up at the towering peak that disappeared into the clouds, he realized just how daunting the task would be. For the first time in his life, he would face a challenge that required more than just minimal effort. A small part of him wanted to turn back, but something, the monk's faith perhaps, kept him moving forward. As he began the climb, the young man quickly realized it wouldn't be easy. The path was steep, and the air grew thinner with every step. His legs ached, his lungs burned, and sweat poured down his face. After just a few hours, he wanted to quit. He thought about how much easier it would be to return to the village and resume his lazy life under the shade of his favorite tree. But then, a voice echoed in his mind, "Only you can learn what this journey will teach." These words pushed him onward, step by painful step. As the days passed, the climb grew harder. The young man encountered sharp rocks, icy winds, and treacherous terrain. He stumbled, he fell, and he bruised himself, but each time he got back up. The mountain was relentless, but so was a newfound determination inside him. With every hardship, he began to realize something. He was capable of more than he had ever believed. Laziness was no longer a refuge. It was an enemy to be defeated. On the third day, exhausted but resolute, the young man reached the summit. The view was breathtaking. He could see the entire valley below, stretching out endlessly. But he wasn't here for the view. He was here for the feather. Looking around, he spotted a majestic eagle soaring above. The bird circled the peak a few times, and then, as if by fate, a single feather drifted down from the sky, landing softly at his feet. He picked it up, marveling at how such a small, delicate thing had led him on such an arduous journey. Feather in hand, he began his descent, feeling lighter with every step. The return journey was still difficult, but something had changed within him. He no longer felt like the same lazy young man who had left the village a few days ago. He felt stronger, not just physically, but mentally. He had faced hardship, and instead of running from it, he had conquered it. When he finally returned to the village, the monk was waiting for him. The young man handed him the feather, expecting a simple thank you. But the monk looked at him with deep understanding and said, "You have brought me the feather, but what you truly brought back was something far more valuable. You have discovered your strength, your determination, and your ability to overcome." The young man, now standing taller than ever before, realized the truth in the monk's words. The journey wasn't about the feather. It was about facing his laziness and proving to himself that he could be more. The monk continued, "Laziness isn't just about doing nothing. It's about refusing to challenge yourself, about settling for less when you're capable of more. You climbed that mountain not because I needed the feather, but because you needed the journey." The young man nodded, understanding for the first time that laziness wasn't a state of being. It was a choice. And just like he had chosen to climb the mountain, he could choose to overcome laziness in all areas of his life. From that day on, the young man was no longer known as the laziest person in the village. Instead, he became known for his work ethic, his resilience, and his willingness to tackle any challenge that came his way. The video ends with the monk's final words. "Laziness is a challenge, not a trait. Overcome it, and there is no mountain too high."